guys, we're making kimchi. Got our cabbage all cut up. Add a little salt in between. All this salt's going to be washed out before we put it all together in the next stage. But for now, the salt is going to extract all the moisture out of the leaves. And get as much of that water out as possible. There we go. Looking good. I just need something to set on top. I'm just going to fill this up with water and then use the weight from the water to weigh it down. And there it is. I'll let that sit. Just check it every now and then to make sure that it's level. But I'm going to let that sit until tomorrow morning. And then it should be full of water in the bottom around the edge. And then we just dump out the water and we'll go on with step 2. Alright guys, this is the beginning of kimchi. This is a little glutinous rice. A little sweet rice, sticky rice, they call it. And this is to feed our ferment, our bacteria and yeast that are in there. So this is the rice flour is what we're making. So first we need to make rice flour, and this is glutinous rice, sweet rice, so that's going to be our nutrition in addition to the vegetables, but this is going to be the nutrition for the bacteria and yeast that are in there doing their fermenting. It's looking about right. Yep, that's a good powder consistency. It's exactly what we want. Alright guys, this is our NAPA cabbage that we've had sitting overnight. And it is now being pressed to get all the water out after we combine some salt with it. So I'm going to take this off. Alright, so that is definitely down a few inches, and I filled it up again. I put another cabbage in later last night. So, but this is good, and there should be a good amount of water in there. We're going to dump all that water out in just a second. So now we have to wash this, and what that means is to take it out of here and put it into another container and rinse it off in the process. You gotta squeeze out all the water as much as possible. So I do this 2 or 3 times, where I just squeeze it and then put it in a different container. It's a lot easier with 2 hands. That's actually pretty good, guys. I'm going to leave that the way it is. I think you want enough liquid in there so that when you push down on your vegetables in the jar that the liquid covers the vegetables. So, and you'll see what I'm talking about. We're going to make a solution here in just a second to pour over the top of this, and that's the main kimchi sauce. So the kimchi sauce is going to add liquid to this, and it's, you just want just enough liquid so that the amount of vegetation that you have sits underneath the surface level, and that prevents contamination. So when the pH reaches 4.3, it is too acidic for most of the molds to colonize, so we won't have to worry about contamination as much from mold spores, things that come from the air that fall into it. So okay guys, now we've got to get our carrots ready, and our garlic cloves, and our daikon radish, and a little ginger. and some pepper. Don't forget the Korean chili peppers. That is the most important part of this recipe. So what we've got here is the Korean chili peppers, and then we have our miso. This is a vegan kimchi because my girlfriend Jess is vegetarian, so we're doing a vegetarian style kimchi, but we need something with microbes in it, and this is an active ferment, so this is going to take the place of fish sauce. And we like that oniony, scalliony flavor that we get, so we use a good bit of scallions here. And we've got some celery, some fresh ginger. This is a daikon radish, a little bit bigger than the ones we grow in our yard. You can tell I got this at the store. But we do have some in our yard that are about half this size right now, so we're pretty excited to be able to grow those. But we just decided to pick one up since we were at the market anyway, getting the miso and the red chili flakes. But then carrots, guys. So we like to do the julienne slices with the peeler. Get a vegetable peeler and do julienne slices, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. But that is how we basically do this. We just julienne everything. We've never put celery in it before, so Jess really likes celery, so I thought I would add it this time just to see, and we're going to be putting it in little sticks. Because the scallions work out so well when we make little sticks. They're like little nice treats when we get to them in the jars. So this is what we're working with today, guys, and we're just taking this and combining it, and we're going to make a paste, and that's pretty much it. So, alright, let's rock forward with this. Hope you guys are having a good day. I leave the peeling on everything because the peeling has, this is where most of the microbes are. On the outside, it has an internal and external biome like we do, so there's microbes on the inside and the outside, but we want lactobacillus. It's found mostly on the skin, so that's what we're trying to culture, if you will, and so the more skin we leave on, the better our chances, but there's also other contaminations involved, and that's why we put a little salt in. So 2% salt, and that will make sure that you're not going to have any issues with contamination. A lot of our kimchi water will come from this once we get it pushed in. Guys, I put lids on mine, these plates that I have, just to keep the flies off while I'm making the sauce. But now we move on. It's sauce time. Alright guys, we have this is our water, and we have about 1 cup of water. So we're going to throw that in to heat up. And we need our sugar. This is a little, this is what the bacteria eat. Lactobacillus that we're using to do our ferment. The natural culture of lactobacillus is very sugar hungry, so it likes, like for instance, when we're doing compost tea for the yard and we're trying to culture it in that way for compost tea, we use molasses. So molasses is something that it likes a lot, which is simple sugar. So basically just keep in mind that simple sugars are how you feed it, and we're about to do the same thing with a simple sugar and use starch, which turns into sugar once it gets into us. So our starch is going to be our rice flour that we made. So we took glutinous rice and we blended it into a powder in a blender. Alright, the sugar's dissolved, so we're going to add our flour. And you're just trying to make like a gravy. That's the whole point, is to make a gravy consistency. So we also have to put in, turn the stove down a little bit, just needs to be at a simmer. So we also need to cook in our chili peppers. I have a jar right here, I've already opened. We like a lot of chili pepper. It needs a little more water. So that would be about 2 cups, guys. That would be about 2 cups total of water. But I didn't really measure anything. I'm just kind of doing it to consistency because you want it to be like a paste. And I also put 2% salt. So this is what a lot of people don't do. We've already got some salt in the vegetation from soaking it overnight, but I like to do 2% salt will guarantee that nothing gets into this. So, it gives you a better chance anyway. So, because there's no real guarantee, but you know, if you live in an environment with lots of spores, nobody can really guarantee that you're not going to do something that's going to contaminate your ferment. So what I like to do is just make sure that there's 2% salt in there as a backup to kind of reinforce the fact. So what we need to do is weigh this out, and how we do that is we have 2 of the same bowls. I'm just going to move this off the heat for just a couple minutes. Let it thicken up a little bit, and then we need to weigh this out. 2 bowls, there we go, perfect. Here we have zeroed out. We're going to switch it up, and we have approximately 2,700 grams, so we just need 2% of that. 2744 times 0.02 equals 54.88 grams. Now here's the trick. That is an incredible amount of salt. So what I want to do is not put that entire amount, because we've already got a lot of salt in the vegetation already. So we don't need all of this. So I believe I'm going to use about half of what it's calling for. So let's divide this by 2. 2 equals 27. So 27 is where we're aiming for. So that's 40. And that's good. Alright, so this is what we want. So just drop that right in there. Alright guys, you can either wait for this to cool, or if you're impatient and have things to do like me, I've got a whole day of stuff I need to get done. What I do is just put a little extra rice flour in and throw some ice cubes in, and that usually pulls it down pretty quickly, and the additional flour will soak up that extra moisture. Just got to make sure we don't put it on the vegetation while it's hot, or else we will kill all of our microbes that are going to help us ferment our food. Alright. The ice isn't melting anymore, and this tastes really, really good. So, and it's really cool, so it's not warm at all. So we're gonna go ahead and mix all this in. Alright. Alright guys, and we're also going to do miso. At this point, this is where we put our fermentations in. I'm just going to go ahead and use the rest of this package. Actually, that's a lot. That's a lot of miso. So we'll probably use, let's see. It's about, we used about 4 tablespoons of sugar. So that looks like about 3 or 4, that's probably, actually, I'd say 4 tablespoons of miso. If you need a measurement, but that's what we're going to do. That's a good amount. We really just need enough to get the culture going. So that should be plenty. So I didn't need to buy a whole new pack. But now we have some. Miso lasts a long time. It's fermented, so it lasts years. And especially when it's sealed like this, airtight. Or actually, that's the plastic itself along the edges should actually allow for a little bit of gas exchange. Even the most micro amount is enough to keep those alive. Secret ingredient to good kimchi is the Korean chili peppers. Hands down, no questions asked. Little sugar in there, Korean chili peppers, and you know, it's just, you can just do cabbage and that, and it's amazing. That's looking right. I like to see the pepper flakes, the abundant pepper flakes all over the vegetation. So, guys, if you will, this to me is a beautiful consistency for putting in the jar and expecting quality results. And I believe that the way it looks makes a huge difference. I mean, just in terms of, you know, not having to read a recipe every time you make it and be able to tell what you're doing based on what it looks like. So in terms of the vegetation, like the cabbage, we can see how it's a little bit clear around the outside. That's typically what it looks like when it's been well drained with the salt. And the leaves themselves are wilted, so have a wilted appearance. That's a good sign. That means that they were submerged in salt well. We also have a nice kind of a reddish sheen to it. Still some chili peppers need to get mixed in, but you can see the flakes and how the flakes are apparent on a lot of what we're doing, and that's what I like to see, is those flakes on the surface to know that I've put enough. If I don't see flakes, more goes in, lots more. Alright, so here we go. It's stuffing time, and what I like to do is keep a plate underneath, so like so. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, we're just gonna cram it in. Actually, yeah, we'll just rinse the glass off and cram it in. I might have made enough for 2 jars this time. Normally I just make 1. I wanted to make sure we made enough because we love this stuff. We eat it a lot. Now that I've learned how good it is for you and why it's good for you, you know, getting these disease-fighting microbes into our gut. You know, I learned to make this before I knew about that, so I'm even more excited to know this information and the better way of life that it represents, and then to actually know how to do it. This is cool, man. This gives this whole exercise a whole new feeling. I don't like to use single-use plastic stuff anymore, but we're going to use a gallon Ziploc bag to hold this down and keep it underneath the liquid, and you'll see why in just a second. That's good though. That's a good amount of liquid. This is important. We're going to use this bag on top, And that's going to be like our airlock, like so. Ha! Perfect. That's awesome. Alright. What I'm doing is using the bag to go around and just keep the liquid above the vegetation as much as I can. And tomorrow there's going to be a lot more. So the trick is just to make it through the first night without getting a lot of contamination in there, and then it's usually pretty good, I think, in terms of the pH being low enough. But so the bag, and cover the top so it's down like this, and then I'm going to get some water and just pour water in the cup and set the cup right in there. Okay, so this is just going to, you can see as I push the cup down, the water comes up. So that's the whole point, is just a little displacement to keep the little bit of liquid that's in here above the level of vegetation. But this is really all you need. And then I usually put a rubber band around that plastic. Like so. And that way, if it does, if the solution does start to ferment and get a lot of carbonation in it and start to erupt, the rubber band will keep most of the liquid inside the jar and just let pressure out. But you may get some liquid around the bottom, which is why I usually only like to fill it up halfway. But I'm kind of running low on containers, so I need to only have one more jar I can use. But guys, this is basically what we're doing, and then we just let this sit and start fermenting, and every day come in and push down like you saw me do just a second ago, and then just to get the vegetation below the liquid, and keep pushing it down, and you'll notice that after a while there's more and more liquid. So, and that's good. That's what we want, is that fermentation process. So guys, another way to do it is how they do it at Saigon Market here in town, and that is they make the mixture that we just did and make sure that it's biologically active, and what they use is fish sauce instead of miso. So I use miso, and they use fish sauce because it's an active ferment. You're adding microbes, but miso or fish sauce is a quick way to get them in there without having to culture them from the air or from the vegetation. So we need to create an environment that lacks oxygen, and as the yeast and the bacteria start to break this down right away, they're going to be using what little oxygen is in there, that's in the interstitial spaces. They're going to be converting that into carbon dioxide. But you're supposed to take the lid off and burp it, every few hours if you're doing that kind of thing. But the guys at Saigon Market, they defy the laws, man. They stuff it in the jars, put the lids on, stick it on the shelf, and slap an expiration date on it. Oh, here it is. Yeah. Well, you can't really tell, but so this is what they do, and then they just slap a sell-by date at the bottom, But after I've picked it up before the day after they've made it, and it didn't have any fizz to it, and it wasn't fermented. So if you get it from a store right away after they make it, the chances are it's not even cultured. Like, it doesn't have the microbes. The microbes haven't been breeding and multiplying. So that's the goal, is to use this to create more microbes, so that your microbe foods are high in microbial concentrations instead of just the small amounts that we get from eating vegetation from the garden. So we need to really jam them into this and breed them so that we can use this as compost for our guts. And if you get it right away after it's being made, like if I ate this today, it would be pointless. It would still do something, but it's beneficial to us and be healthy. The sugars need to be eaten though, so we put some simple sugars in here, and the longer we leave it and the more carbonation we find in here, that is the sugars being converted. So that means that there's less sugar, and that's what we did, was we need to feed the bacteria and the microbes. So anything that's in here basically is going to be eating that simple sugar and creating carbon dioxide, which is what we want. So okay guys, so I'm just basically going to stuff this in here, and I'm going to do like a Saigon Market ferment and just give it a try, just see how it works out. Awesome. Really pushing it in. There we go. So you guys can see liquid is in the top, and I can push down and get everything submerged. They're coming back up, but once I get that lid on, once the lid's on here, I won't have to worry about that. I'm using this lid on this one just to see how it works. And I'm going to put just a little bit more because I want it to be filled up to the rim. So just a few more pieces. My cup have runneth over. That's where we want. So, very little oxygen. And that should do it, guys. That looks like the awesome sauce. Maybe a little bit more. Put 1 or 2 pieces, just like so. That way, as I screw down, it will raise the level of water, moisture. Alright, so that's it. Oh, that lid did not go on there correctly. That looks good. Okay. Alright, we're going to see. Those are supposed to be airtight lids. If I can ever get this off again, we're going to see what that tastes like. Because that, I've done this before where the pressure increases, and these kinds of lids, man, they get glued on. So I've actually found that using the other lids for mason jars is easier, but you have to worry about them losing pressure if they warp. So the warping is a problem. So anyway, guys, this is method number 2 of jarring. But again, it just depends on what you're going for. This is something that you can leave and eat like in 2 weeks. And if you do it this way, you can do a longer ferment, you know, because these will stay alive a lot longer. All the microbes, and if they stay alive longer, then they're going to continue to eat, which is going to continue to ferment it, and they're going to continue to breed. So we're getting more microbes the longer we do that. And microbes don't last forever; they only live like a 24 hours. So usually 24 hours is the life cycle of most, but because they reproduce constantly, that they're carrying on that strain, and that carcass that they've left, their remains are actually nutrition. After like about 2 weeks is when I usually either put it in the fridge or put it in different jars and let it ferment for a couple more days. But I found that on the second ferment, like it's not really a second ferment, it's really like a second jarring or containering. But if we put it in a different container and we set it on the shelf and the lids aren't pressure tight or made for pressure, then they actually will expand, and you'll see it'll break the seal, especially on these mason jar lids, especially if you put one on the top, and like if you're using mason jars to divide it all up, and the pressure increases in here too much, it will actually crack or bend the lid, and it creates a weak spot where the pressure can come out, and you don't want that. So at least I don't. I like the carbonation to be in there. I like to trap the carbonic acid so that it's fizzy when I open it, and I just love that flavor and that additional kind of fizziness sensation that you get when you eat kimchi after it's been captured. We've captured the CO2. For example, this is a lid that has, you can see, I used for kimchi. This is the last kimchi lid that I used on a different jar, and it bent heavily as the pressure increased. So you can kind of bend them back, but they're never really as good as new. This is not the best lids to use, I've found. In some cases, I've actually doubled them up and used 2 on top just to reinforce it. And I don't really know if that helped or not, but getting appropriate jars and appropriate lids for pressure, I would definitely recommend for doing this kind of stuff. But if you're trying not to spend money, then you don't really need it. You can do it with just a regular jar, just don't fill it up as much. Like down to here, about halfway is usually good. But the more air you have as well, the more chance you have for contamination. So you got to think about these things and balance them out a little bit. But if you put enough salt in here, you don't have to worry about contamination as much. So just a couple points, guys. I hope this is helping, and I hope you enjoyed the mixture that we've made and the ferment that we've started. So have a great day. This is Tom with Permaculture Wilmington.